France was forced out of the Sahel. Traoré united Mali, Burkina, and Niger. Then one president opened the door again for French forces. His name is Ouattara. The desert wind carried the smell of burning rubber across Ouagadougou that morning. Captain Ibrahim Traoré stood on the roof of the presidential palace, only 36 years old, wearing the same green uniform he had worn when he took power 3 years earlier. Below him, 30,000 people filled the square. They were not clapping, they were waiting. Traoré raised the microphone. His voice was calm, almost tired, but every word hit like a hammer. Today, the last French soldier leaves Burkina Faso. No more bases, no more orders from Paris. The Sahel is waking up. A roar went up. In the distance, black smoke rose from the old French camp at Cambouins. Soldiers in blue berets climbed into green trucks, while Burkinabe troops watched them with rifles ready. One French officer tried to salute. A young Burkinabe lieutenant stepped forward and simply pointed to the gate. No words. The officer lowered his hand and walked away. The crowd screamed louder. That same week, the same scene happened in Bamako, Mali, and in Niamey, Niger. 3 countries, 3 coups, 1 message. France was out. In Paris, the government called it a temporary setback. In Abidjan, the capital of Côte d'Ivoire, President Alassane Ouattara smiled quietly in his marble palace and said nothing on television. But inside his office, the lights stayed on until 3 a.m. Traoré did not sleep much either. At midnight, he sat in a small room with 3 intelligence officers. The table was covered with maps and fresh photographs. "Look," said Colonel Diallo, sliding a satellite image across the table. "French special forces landed at Yamoussoukro airport yesterday. Not tourists. They carried heavy bags. And Ouattara's personal guard met them at the runway." Traoré stared at the photo. The faces were clear. He had seen those men before, in the old days when they trained with French troops in Burkina. Ouattara opened the door, Traoré said softly. "He gave them new bases. He thinks we are stupid." Colonel Diallo lowered his voice. "Worse, Captain. Our spies inside Côte d'Ivoire say the French are already moving money and weapons to the jihadist groups in the north. The same groups that attack our villages every week. Ouattara knows. He takes his cut in euros and in gold. He wants the Sahel to bleed until we beg France to come back." The room was silent except for the hum of the old air conditioner. Traoré stood up. His eyes were dark, but there was fire in them. He walked to the window and looked south, toward the border with Côte d'Ivoire, 400 kilometers away. "They think they can stop the revolution from Abidjan," he said. "They are wrong." He turned back to his men. "Tomorrow I speak to the whole Sahel. Live. I will say his name. Alassane Ouattara. I will say he sold Africa to keep his chair. I will say the puppets in Abidjan will fall like the others." One officer whispered, "That will be dangerous, Captain. Ouattara has French jets on his side now." Traoré smiled for the first time that night. A small, cold smile. "Good. Let the world watch what happens when one African stands up and says the truth. The Sahel will not break. Mali will not break. Burkina will not break. Niger will not break." He picked up the satellite photo and held it high. "And history will remember who opened the door for the old masters and who closed it forever." Outside, the crowd was still singing. The last French flag had just been burned in the square. The smoke rose straight into the African sky like a signal. The revolution had only just begun. February 2026. Abidjan glittered under the night sky. The Abrier Lagoon reflected the lights of tall hotels and French restaurants along the boulevard. In the presidential palace at Plateau, Alassane Ouattara, now in his late 70s, sat at a long, polished table. Across from him were 2 men in civilian clothes, but their postures screamed military. One was a former French DGSE officer, gray hair, sharp eyes. The other, a current liaison from Paris. Maps and encrypted laptops lay between them. Ouattara spoke first, voice low and steady. "The Sahel is burning. Good. Let it burn a little longer." The Frenchman nodded. "We have repositioned. Small teams, discreet. Bases near Yamoussoukro and in the north, near the Burkina border. No flags, no announcements. Your security forces provide the cover." Ouattara leaned back. And the support to the groups? Cash flows through intermediaries. Weapons drop in the tri-border zone. JNIM and ISGS get what they need to keep pressure on Traoré's positions. Nothing traceable to us or to you. Ouattara's fingers tap the table. I take risks. My people see French planes again. They will ask questions. The youth already whisper about puppet. The liaison smiled thinly. You rebuilt the economy. You kept stability when neighbors fell to coups. Paris remembers. When the AES collapses, and it will, your loyalty buys influence. New contracts, mining rights, military pacts renewed on better terms. Ouattara looked out the window at the city he had shaped. Skyscrapers, ports full of cargo, but also slums where anger grew. He knew the game. France had backed him since 2010. Without their quiet help, he might not have held power this long. Traoré named me in his speech last week, Ouattara said. He accused me directly, said I allow terrorists to use my soil to attack the revolution. The Frenchman shrugged. Words. He has no proof, and his army is stretched thin. Every village attack weakens him. Every dead soldier turns people against him. Ouattara was silent for a moment. Then, make sure the next big hit is visible, something that forces him to overreact, something the world sees. The men left at 2 a.m. Ouattara stayed alone, staring at a photo on his desk himself, shaking hands with Emmanuel Macron years ago. He whispered to the empty room. The Sahel wants change, but change costs blood. 3 days later, near the Burkina Côte d'Ivoire border, in a dusty village called Nyangoloko, a convoy of Burkinabe VDP, volunteers for the defense of the homeland, rolled in at dawn, young men on motorbikes, rifles slung, escorting food aid. They were tired. They had fought jihadists for weeks. Suddenly, gunfire erupted from the tree line. Not AKs, precise shots, sniper fire, then RPGs. The lead bike exploded. Men screamed. Within minutes, 20 VDP lay dead or wounded. The attackers melted back across the invisible line into Ivorian territory. But one survivor, bleeding from the leg, crawled to a wrecked truck. He found something on a dead attacker's body. A French-made radio, frequency still tuned to an Abidjan channel, and a small patch tricolor stripes hidden under black cloth. The survivor photographed it with his phone before passing out. Hours later, the images reached Ouagadougou. Traoré's intelligence chief burst into the captain's office. Captain, look. The weapons are new. French Mirage jets were spotted low over the border yesterday training flight, they said. But our man says the attackers spoke French, not Fulfulde or Arabic. And this radio, it's calling base Abidjan Control. Traoré stared at the photo. His jaw tightened. He was quiet for a long time. Then he spoke, voice like ice. Ouattara knows. He allows it. He profits from every drop of Sahel blood. He stood up, walked to the map on the wall. His finger traced south to Abidjan. We will not beg. We will not wait. Tell the AES Council. Joint operation planning starts tonight. We expose this. We hit back. Not with words, with action. Outside, in the streets of Ouagadougou, people gathered again. They chanted his name. They burned French flags. But now some held signs. Ouattara traitor. Blood on your hands. The revolution was no longer just waking up. It was ready to strike. February 2026. Abidjan glittered under the night sky. The Ebrié Lagoon reflected the lights of tall hotels and French restaurants along the boulevard. In the presidential palace at Plateau, Alassane Ouattara, now in his late 70s, sat at a long, polished table. Across from him were two men in civilian clothes, but their postures screamed military. One was a former French DGSE officer, gray hair, sharp eyes. The other, a current liaison from Paris. Maps and encrypted laptops lay between them. Ouattara spoke first, voice low and steady. The Sahel is burning. Good. Let it burn a little longer. The Frenchman nodded. We have repositioned. Small teams. Discreet. Bases near Yamoussoukro and in the north, near the Burkina border. No flags. No announcements. Your security forces provide the cover. Ouattara leaned back. And the support to the groups? Cash flows through intermediaries. Weapons drop in the tri-border zone. JNIM and ISGS get what they need to keep pressure on Traore's positions. Nothing traceable to us or to you. Ouattara's fingers tapped the table. I take risks. My people see French planes again. They will ask questions. The youth already whisper about puppet. The liaison smiled thinly. You rebuilt the economy. You kept stability when neighbors fell to coups. Paris remembers. When the AES collapses, and it will, your loyalty buys influence. New contracts, mining rights, military pacts renewed on better terms. Ouattara looked out the window at the city he had shaped. Skyscrapers, ports full of cargo, but also slums where anger grew. He knew the game. France had backed him since 2010. Without their quiet help, he might not have held power this long. Traoré named me in his speech last week, Ouattara said. He accused me directly, said I allow terrorists to use my soil to attack the revolution. The Frenchman shrugged. Words. He has no proof, and his army is stretched thin. Every village attack weakens him. Every dead soldier turns people against him. Ouattara was silent for a moment. Then, make sure the next big hit is visible, something that forces him to overreact, something the world sees. The men left at 2 a.m. Ouattara stayed alone, staring at a photo on his desk, himself shaking hands with Emmanuel Macron years ago. He whispered to the empty room, The Sahel wants change, but change costs blood. 3 days later, near the Burkina Côte d'Ivoire border, in a dusty village called Nyangoloko, a convoy of Burkinabe VDP, volunteers for the defense of the homeland, rolled in at dawn, young men on motorbikes, rifles slung, escorting food aid. They were tired. They had fought jihadists for weeks. Suddenly, gunfire erupted from the tree line. Not AKs, precise shots, sniper fire, then RPGs. The lead bike exploded. Men screamed. Within minutes, 20 VDP lay dead or wounded. The attackers melted back across the invisible line into Ivorian territory. But one survivor, bleeding from the leg, crawled to a wrecked truck. He found something on a dead attacker's body. A French-made radio, frequency still tuned to an Abidjan channel, and a small patch tricolor stripes hidden under black cloth. The survivor photographed it with his phone before passing out. Hours later, the images reached Ouagadougou. Traoré's intelligence chief burst into the captain's office. Captain, look, the weapons are new. French Mirage jets were spotted low over the border yesterday training flight, they said. But our man says the attackers spoke French, not Fulfulde or Arabic. And this radio, it's calling base Abidjan Control. Traoré stared at the photo. His jaw tightened. He was quiet for a long time. Then he spoke, voice like ice. Ouattara knows. He allows it. He profits from every drop of Sahel blood. He stood up, walked to the map on the wall. His finger traced south to Abidjan. We will not beg. We will not wait. Tell the AES Council. Joint operation planning starts tonight. We expose this. We hit back. Not with words, with action. Outside, in the streets of Ouagadougou, people gathered again. They chanted his name. They burned French flags. But now some held signs. Ouattara traitor. Blood on your hands. The revolution was no longer just waking up. It was ready to strike. The sun was brutal that afternoon. Over 80,000 people packed the Place des Nations in Ouagadougou. No tickets, no barriers, just bodies pressed together under flags of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. AES banners fluttered everywhere. Alliance of Sahel States. A giant screen had been set up on a scaffold so even those at the back could see. Ibrahim Traoré walked onto the stage alone. No bodyguards visible. Just him in faded camouflage, boots dusty from the morning patrol he had insisted on doing himself. He carried no notes. The crowd fell silent the moment he raised his hand. He looked straight into the camera. His broadcast was going live across the 3 countries, streamed on every available channel, shared on phones in villages with no electricity. Brothers and sisters of the Sahel, he began, voice steady, but carrying the weight of every funeral he had attended. For too long, we bled in silence. We watched foreign powers draw lines on our maps, take our gold, our uranium, our children's future. We said enough. Cheers erupted. but he held up his hand again. Today I speak a name the world does not want me to say. Alassane Ouattara, President of Côte d'Ivoire. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Phones were raised higher. Ouattara has opened his country to the same forces we expelled. French special units operate from bases in Yamoussoukro and Korhogo. They supply money, weapons, intelligence to the terrorists who slaughter our people. We have proof. Radios, photos, captured equipment marked with French codes, attackers who spoke perfect French and vanished south across the border. He paused. Let it sink in. Ouattara knows. Ouattara allows it. Ouattara profits. Every village burned, every child orphaned, every soldier we bury it buys him time. It buys France a way back in. He wants the Sahel to stay weak so the old colonial game can restart. The crowd exploded. Trait! Trait! They shouted. Some burned small Ivorian flags they had brought. Others simply stood stunned. Traore continued, quieter now, almost conversational. But hear me clearly. The Sahel will not break. Mali will not break. Burkina Faso will not break. Niger will not break. We are one now. The AES is not words on paper, it is our blood, our resolve. And Africa is watching. The youth of Senegal, of Guinea, of Ghana, they see what we do. They see who stands with the people and who sells them for euros and power. He pointed south, toward the horizon. Ouattara, if you hear this, your betrayal ends here. Pull your guests out. Close the doors you opened, or the Sahel will come to remind you that no puppet lasts forever. He stepped back. No bow, no wave. Just turned and walked off the stage as the crowd chanted his name like thunder. Jaw-dropping scene. The assassination attempt. That night, 11:47 p.m., Traoré's convoy left the palace for a secure residence outside the city. 3 Toyota pickups, armed escorts, lights off to avoid attention. Halfway down a dark stretch of road near Pissy, a roadside IED detonated under the second vehicle. Orange fireball, shrapnel tore through metal. The lead truck swerved, tires screaming. Gunfire erupted from the bush automatic rifles. At least 6 shooters. Traoré's driver floored it. Bullets pinged off armored plates. The captain was in the back seat, already pulling his sidearm, shouting orders. Ambush! Protect the flanks! One of the escort VDP leaned out and returned fire with a PKM machine gun. Tracer rounds lit the night red. 2 attackers fell. The rest retreated into the trees. When the smoke cleared, the middle vehicle was burning. 4 dead, 7 wounded. Traoré's truck had taken hits but held. He stepped out, face streaked with dust and blood from a shallow cut on his forehead. He walked to the wreckage, knelt beside a dying young soldier, no older than 20. The boy grabbed Traoré's hand. Captain, don't stop! Traoré squeezed back. We don't stop. Later, forensics found shell casings 5.56 millimeters NATO standard, and one item that made the intelligence room go dead silent, a small encrypted sat phone dropped in the panic. When cracked open hours later, the last outgoing message read, Target missed, Ouattara informed. Await new instructions. Traoré read the transcript at 4 a.m. He didn't shout. He just folded the paper, put it in his pocket, and looked at his officers. They tried to silence me tonight. They failed. Tomorrow we plan the response. Not revenge. Justice. He walked to the window. Dawn was breaking over Ouagadougou. Smoke still rose from the ambush site in the distance. The puppets are afraid now, he said quietly. Good. Let them be afraid. The morning after Traoré's speech, Abidjan woke to silence that felt wrong. Normally the city buzzed horns, vendors, French expats sipping coffee on terraces. Today the streets were quieter. People checked their phones, shared clips of the Ouagadougou speech, whispered in markets. He said the name, one woman told her friend, at the Treichville market, Ouattara. Out loud. Inside the presidential palace, Alassane Ouattara had not slept. He sat in his office with the curtains drawn, television muted on international news. CNN replayed Traoré's words in a loop. Ouattara knows. Ouattara allows it. Ouattara profits. French 24 called it the most direct accusation yet from the AES bloc. Al Jazeera showed crowds in Bamako burning Ouattara's photo. His chief of staff entered without knocking. "Sir, the French ambassador requests an urgent call, and ECOWAS is drafting a statement condemning inflammatory rhetoric, but stopping short of naming Traoré." Ouattara rubbed his temples. "They want me to deny everything, publicly. Say it's lies, propaganda. And if you don't, then Paris pulls support." Quietly at first, delayed loans, frozen accounts. Then, louder. He stood, walked to a safe in the wall, opened it. Inside, stacks of documents, USB drives, a small ledger of offshore transfers. He took one folder labeled Yamoussoukro, Phase 2, and dropped it on the desk. "Tell the ambassador I will speak this afternoon. I will call it baseless slander. I will invite UN observers to the bases, let them see nothing. But privately, tell Paris to accelerate deliveries. Traoré must bleed more, make the next attacks bigger, visible, something that forces AES to fracture." The chief of staff hesitated. "Sir, after last night's attempt failed, they'll be watching closer." Ouattara's eyes were hard. "Then make sure the next one doesn't fail." February 24, near the Malian border town of Tinzaouaten, but on the Ivorian side first. At 3:17 am, 2 white Toyota Hilux trucks, no plates, crossed from Côte d'Ivoire into Mali. Inside, 8 men in black fatigues, faces covered. They carried French FAMAS rifles, night vision goggles, and crates marked Humanitarian Aid, EU. But inside the crates, RPGs, grenades, and brand new PK machine guns, still in grease. They stopped at a small AES outpost, 10 Malian soldiers and 12 VDP guarding a borehole that supplied 3 villages. The attackers opened fire without warning. Tracers cut the dark. Grenades exploded against sandbag walls. Within 7 minutes, every defender was down, dead. No survivors. But they didn't stop there. They drove into the nearest village, woke families by firing into the air. Then, systematically burned huts, shot anyone who ran. Women screamed as children were pulled from beds. A drone, small, quiet, French-manufactured, hovered overhead, filming it all. The footage was meant for one purpose: to leak later, show Sahel chaos, prove AES couldn't protect its people. By dawn, 47 bodies lay in the sand, mostly civilians. Among them, an AES nurse who had come to vaccinate children the day before. Her white coat was soaked red. The attackers withdrew south, crossed back into Ivorian territory before sunrise. One dropped a single item in the panic: a French military ration pack wrapper, expiration date 2028, batch code traceable to a Marseille supplier. AES intelligence recovered it within hours. Photos of the wrapper, the drone wreckage they shot down later, and survivor testimonies reached Traoré by noon. He was in a forward command post near the border when the report came. He watched the grainy phone footage from a villager who hid in a well, children crying, flames, men speaking French over radios. Traoré's hands shook not from fear, from rage. He slammed the tablet down. "This is not jihadists," he said to his officers. "This is state-sponsored terror. Ouattara's guests did this, with his knowledge." He stood, voice low but carrying across the tent. "Call the AES summit. Emergency. Tonight. We go public with everything: names, dates, evidence. No more waiting. We expose the massacre. We name the bases. We call for African Union intervention." One colonel spoke up. "Captain, if we release this, war could come. Côte d'Ivoire has a real army. French backing." Traoré looked at him, eyes burning. "Then let it come. The Sahel has bled enough in silence. Now the world will see who the real terrorists are." He turned to the map, drew a red line, straight to Abidjan. "The puppets think they can hide behind borders. We will show them borders mean nothing when the people rise." Outside, Malian and Burkinabe troops were already mobilizing. Trucks loaded, flags raised. The chant started small, then grew. Sahel uni jamais brisé. The revolution was no longer defending. It was advancing. The AES Emergency Summit was held in a fortified conference hall on the outskirts of Ouagadougou. No marble tables, no chandeliers, just concrete walls, folding chairs, and a long map table covered in red pins marking attack sites. Present: Ibrahim Traoré, Burkina Faso; Colonel Assimi Goïta, Mali; General Abdourahmane Chiani, Niger, plus intelligence chiefs and foreign ministers. No press. No leaks allowed. But the world already knew something big was happening. Traoré opened without ceremony. He placed a thick folder in the center: photos, transcripts, satellite stills, the French ration wrapper, the sat phone message log from the ambush, drone wreckage serial numbers traced to a French defense contractor. "Gentlemen," he said, "this is not accusation. This is evidence. Côte d'Ivoire has become the rear base for the war against us. Ouattara hosts French units that arm and direct jihadists. The Tinzaouaten massacre, 47 dead, mostly women and children, was not random. It was ordered, filmed, to break our will." He clicked a remote. A projector lit the wall. Blurry drone footage of the burning village, French voices on radio chatter. Target neutralized. Exfil south. Then the rapper close-up. Goïta spoke first, voice gravel. "Mali lost 6 soldiers in the same week from weapons we know came through northern Ivorian corridors. We have intercepts. They call the supply line Route Claire." Chiani nodded. "Niger has the same. Uranium convoys attacked right after French training flights over our border. Ouattara denies, but his army stands down when the trucks cross." Traoré leaned forward. "We released this today. Full dossier. To African Union, to the UN Security Council, to every major media outlet. Al Jazeera, RT, Press TV, even Western ones if they dare touch it. We name the bases: Yamoussoukro Forward Operating Site, Korhogo Logistics Hub. We demand immediate inspection. If Ouattara refuses, we treat it as admission." A Nigerian general raised his hand. "And if France vetoes at the UN, or sends more troops to Abidjan?" Traoré's answer was calm. "Then we show the world what neo-colonialism looks like in 2026. We call for Pan-African sanctions on Côte d'Ivoire. We mobilize border units, not invasion defense in depth, and we arm every village that wants to defend itself." They voted unanimously. The dossier would drop at 18 GMT. At 6 p.m., the AES press office uploaded everything to a secure site. Within minutes it spread. Number Sahel files trending worldwide. Hashtags in French, Arabic, English. Clips of the village massacre went viral, too graphic for some platforms, but mirrors popped up everywhere. In Abidjan, Ouattara watched from his war room. Screens showed the storm. Protests in Dakar, down with puppets. Solidarity marches in Conakry, even small demonstrations in Accra. French embassy staff were evacuating non-essential personnel. His phone rang non-stop. Macron's office. Brussels. Washington. He called an emergency cabinet meeting. Ministers arrived pale. One, the defense minister, spoke quietly. "Sir, the evidence is damning. Serial numbers match. The voices are identifiable former French special forces. If we let UN inspectors in, they will find something." Ouattara slammed his fist on the table. For the first time, the old man looked truly old. "Then we don't let them in. We call it sovereignty. We say it's AES disinformation. We double security at the bases, and we prepare for the worst." He paused, looked at a photo of himself with Macron on the wall. "Tell Paris, if Traoré crosses the line, we invoke defense pacts. Full support, jets if needed." But as the meeting ended, a young aide burst in without knocking. "Sir, look." He held up his phone. Live feed from Abidjan streets. Thousands gathering near the palace. Not pro-government. Signs read, "Ouattara dehors, Sahel uni, and no more French blood money." Youths burned his portrait. Police hesitated, some even lowered shields. Ouattara stared at the screen. His face drained of color. "They're turning," he whispered. "My own people." Outside the palace gates, the chant grew louder. "Traoré avait raison, Ouattara trait." In Ouagadougou, Traoré watched the same feed in the command center. A small smile crossed his face, not triumph, but recognition. The continent is finished with puppets. he said softly, echoing words he had heard from a village elder weeks before. He turned to his officers. Prepare Phase 1. Border reinforcement, information warfare, and humanitarian corridors for Ivorian refugees if it comes to that. We don't want their country. We want their president to fall on his own sword. The room nodded. Maps were redrawn. Units moved south. The storm had broken, and Abidjan was in the eye. The dossier had been out for 5 days. The world could no longer pretend not to see. In New York, the UN Security Council held emergency sessions. Russia and China pushed for an independent investigation into foreign interference in sovereign African states. France and the US blocked every resolution mentioning specific names or bases, calling it unsubstantiated propaganda. But the footage of Tinzawaten played on loop in closed-door rooms. Diplomats shifted uncomfortably. In Addis Ababa, the African Union Commission issued a rare, strong statement. We condemn any external support to terrorist groups targeting African populations. Côte d'Ivoire is requested to allow immediate, transparent inspection of military facilities near borders. Ouattara's government replied with a defiant, no comment on sovereignty issues. But the real fire burned inside Côte d'Ivoire. Protests swelled from thousands to tens of thousands. In Abidjan's popular quarters, Adjamé, Yopougon, Cocody, the youth led marches. They carried AES flags alongside Ivorian ones, chanting, Sahel uni, Côte d'Ivoire libre. Police used tear gas, then live rounds, 7 dead on March 3. The next day, twice as many marched. Ouattara appeared on television March 4, face drawn, voice thin. These accusations are lies designed to destabilize a stable democracy. France is our partner, not our master. We invite dialogue, not division. Viewers noticed. No denial of the bases, no invitation for inspectors, just vague words. The speech backfired. Hashtags exploded. Number, Ouattara demission. March 7. Dawn. Near the village of Niangoloko, on the Burkina-Côte d'Ivoire border. An AES humanitarian convoy, food, medicine, water for Ivorian refugees fleeing violence, approached the crossing. 50 trucks, escorted by lightly armed VDP and AES troops. No heavy weapons. Transparent tarps so Ivorian border guards could see inside. Sacks of rice, baby formula, antibiotics. On the Ivorian side, 2 companies of Republican Guard, French-trained, backed by 3 AMX, 10 RC armored vehicles. And visible on drone footage later, 2 French Mirage 2000s circling high overhead on routine patrol. The Ivorian commander stepped forward, megaphone in hand. This crossing is closed. Turn back or face consequences. Traoré was not there in person. He was in Ouagadougou coordinating, but his orders were clear, broadcast live to the convoy commander via secure radio. The AES officer replied calmly, on open frequency, so every phone in the region could pick it up. We carry no weapons, only aid for your people. If you fire on starving women and children, the world will see. Africa will see. History will see. Minutes stretched. Tension thick as dust. Then a single shot cracked from the Ivorian side, not aimed at anyone. A warning into the air. The AES troops did not return fire. Instead, they knelt. Every soldier, every driver, every volunteer dropped to one knee in the dirt, hands raised. Behind them, civilian drivers opened truck doors. Women holding babies stepped out, stood beside the vehicles. One elderly Burkinabe woman, grandmother of 3 VDP, walked forward alone, holding a white cloth and a small Ivorian flag. She shouted across the line, voice carrying on the wind, "We are not your enemy. We are your brothers. Let the children eat." Cameras, phones, drones, international journalists who had embedded captured it all. The image went global in minutes. Kneeling AES fighters, a lone grandmother with 2 flags, French jets overhead like vultures. The Ivorian commander hesitated. His radio crackled with panicked orders from Abidjan, then silence. Slowly, one Ivorian soldier lowered his rifle, then another. A murmur spread through their ranks. Some began to cry. The commander turned, barked something. The armored vehicles reversed. The Mirage jets banked away north. The border opened. The convoy rolled through. Ivorian civilians rushed forward to help unload. Soldiers on both sides, once enemies passed water bottles, shook hands quietly. No words needed.